Here we have we're continuing. We're continuing the speech of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave this speech in, what did we say, 1963, did we say? All right, what have we said yesterday? And it's talking about this sentence in this week's Torah portion. A very strange sentence. And the sentence says that God will return together with the exiles. And God will gather you from all of the people that he scattered you around there. So the Rebbe, a short summary. So the Rebbe said, this is Rashi. Rashi says this. Rashi says, this comes to tell you that God, so to speak, he is in exile with the Jewish people, and he is suffering. That's the thing. He is suffering. God is suffering together with the Jews in exile. Suffering the Jews. So it says he's suffering with the Jews in exile, and God will take himself out. So it says, how can he, if he's in exile, so how can he take himself out? If he can take himself out, that means he's not really in exile. It says, no, God, before he went into exile, before the Jewish people were going to go, so God declared that he was going to be in exile for a certain amount of time, and that he couldn't get out. But before he went in, he declared that in a certain time he's going to go out of exile with the Jews. What does it mean to go into exile? The Jews are scattered around the world, and they are lost their Jewish identity, and they intermarry, and they do all sorts of crazy, things against the Torah, against life, against whatever. The Jews are all scattered around, and the reason the Jews do all these crazy things with communism and the Freud and all this other the destructive stuff that Jewish people do, and the heads of it, they become the heads of it. Why? Because they're confused. Because they're confused, because they're in exile, and because it seems that the Judaism has no meaning to it and no meaning. Whatever it is, that the world is just too powerful for them. It's too what's it called? Not impending. There's a word for it. It's too present. There's a better word for it, but I can't. Too threatening and too enticing. The world is and God is together with the Jews. He's there with them, and he's suffering every moment, and he's also in exile, so to speak. God can't do anything to get them out, but to a certain degree. It says the time's going to come when it's going to end, and the Jews are going to go out of exile, and God is going to go with them. And it says, once again, you might think that, God is going to go out before them. It says, no, it's not so. God is going to, that's what the second part says. God is going to gather up the Jews from all of the nations. He's going to gather them up. So what does it mean he's going to gather them up? It says it's a very difficult process, says Rashi. It's a very difficult process. It says, Gadol Yom Kibbutz Galios. It's very Bekushia, it's difficult. Ki'iluhu, as though God himself has to go around and gather each Jew by his hand and take them out. It says by the non-Jews, he also does it, but by the non-Jews, he does it as a nation. If the non-Jews have been driven from their natural land, wherever the people who are, the natural Egyptians, or the natural, he brings the example of Ammon, the people of Ammon. He'll also return them back to their natural places, but as a whole, right? There'll be a lot of them that maybe be left over, left out, but not the Jews. Every single Jew, God is going to take every Jew by his hands. Very, very difficult, so to speak, to do. Okay. Yes. All right, let's go back to that's what we're up to now. Men darf noch aber verstehen. Another thing we have to, however, understand. Alle inyanim, everything, seinen doch bei hashgacha pratis. Everything that happens in the world is because God individually directs that thing. So it comes out as oich begalio sharomos. How can we say that by the other nations that God just brings them as a group, not individually? The Jews he takes individually out of exile. But the other nations, they'll be brought as a whole nation. Generally, maybe someone will be left over, but it's not individual. Says the Rebbe, how can you say anything like that? Everything in the world is individual. Everything that happens in the world is individual. Every bug, every tree, it's individual care and every interaction. So that's what it says, that God takes the nation of Ammon and he brings it back to its place. Ammon, he brings it back to its place. He does it in a general way, not an individual. How can that be? Everything is done in an individual. And like I said, it's every grain of sand is faran hashkacha. So therefore, there is what's called hashkacha pratit. There is individual care. In other words, nitnor, not only is the folk that the whole nation of Ammon in general will be returned from their exile wherever they were, but even more, Velcha mentioned which people from that nation will be redeemed and come back, and in which way they'll do is also because God decides everything individually. That's one of the main messages of Chassidut. In other words, God is more infinite than we can possibly imagine, and he cares about every single molecule and every grain of sand and every human being, every animal, every bug. And that doesn't make any sense. It's, that's now you're starting to understand what God is. Doesn't make any sense, but that's the fact. So if so, because it's so that everything is directed and by God's care, every detail. So it comes out, l'chiora, at first glance, as their oches biyado, that God grabs onto the hand of every Jew. It should be not only by the Jews, it should be the exile of all of the nations, but all the nations that were driven out of their country. That men understand. So how can it possibly be? We'll understand by what is known in the Chassidut. So how is it that the individual attention that God gives to every Jew is special? God gives individual attention to everything. How much more so people, human beings? As thus was the Rambam, that's what the Maimonides says. As hashkacha pratis, that okay, there's in the book of the Moy Nevuchim. Let's see where it says. It brings over here for Nevuchim. This is Moy Nevuchim in the Guide to the Perplexed. Maimonides, he was like the leader of his generation. Maimonides, especially the Jews that were in the Arab states. The Arab states. And and he answered the questions of the time. There were a tremendous confusion going on at that time. And Maimonides, he directed his attention. Now, Maimonides, the name is sort of deceptive, the name, because there was a name that was given to him. Maimonides seems that it's some sort of a Greek scholar or something like that. His name was Moses, the son of Mammon. That was his name, Moshe ben Mammon. He says, Rav Moshe ben Mammon. That's Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Mammon. And he knew everything. He was a tremendous genius. And also he was expert in Kabbalah, but he did not write anything in Kabbalah. He was very heavily influenced because he wanted to know the truth about everything. So he talks about also this idea of God not just creating the world a long time ago and just leaving it, that God is creating everything constantly and that God cares about everything, right? Oh, but how does God care about the Rambam says, as hashkacha pratis is nor oifen min adam. He said that's only by people, only by human beings. If so, that's what the opposite of what we just finished saying. According to the Baal Shem Tov, everything in the world is directed and important. God gives attention and direction to every detail of the world. And Maimonides says, no, the whole rest of the world seems to just go according to nature. God just said, but man, human beings, that God cares about. So it said that seems to be a contradiction to what the Baal Shem Tov says, right? That every detail in the world is important, and Maimonides to God, and Maimonides says only people are important to God. Says the Rebbe, it's no contradiction. Why? As oif domem, why is it no contradiction? At first, that's the biggest contradiction of all. The Baal Shem Tov said that God's care is about even rocks and about the wind blowing and everything, things that don't have any effect on human beings at all. And Rambam says, no, it's only human beings. Says that's a big contradiction. Says no, it's no contradiction. Why? While in dem hashgacha elyona, the attention and the direction that God gives to everything in the world, Zayin and Faran, there are in general two ways. Number one, vize is begiloi, how it's revealed, and how it is meluvash behelam, how it is concealed in garments of nature. Okay, let's see. We'll go. Und das was the Rambam, that what the Rambam says, that on domem, sameachai, on minerals, plants, and animals, there is no, God does not give any attention at all. He doesn't direct them. It doesn't mean that God doesn't care. It means that he doesn't care in a revealed way. We don't see that there's any sort of godliness revealed, that this bug ate that bug, or this fish, he ate another fish, or that fish ate him. It's just nature. God made the laws of nature in the beginning of creation, and everything goes. That's the way everything is, right? Everything is whoever invented the car or the airplane, he doesn't have to be present by every car and every airplane. He just uses the laws of combustion and the laws of aerodynamics, whatever, and the plane goes according to those laws, and the car goes according to those laws. That's it, right? Says the Rebbe, that you might think that that's the way it is with the rest of the world, but it's not so. And that the Rambam seems to say that it is, he's just talking about in a revealed way. In the rest of the world, you don't see any revealed godly direction, but only in human beings do you see. But the fact is, God directs everything that there is in the world. Nothing is, listen, God creates everything in the world. So everything is being created constantly. Says the Rebbe also, every interaction is also being directed by God individually. We also always have to constantly remind ourselves that God is not the Wizard of Oz. God is not sitting behind this big veil with this big desk, and making all these things. God is not a person. God is not a being, right? God creates all being. But on the other hand, he creates all being in a way that he controls everything, and it's important to him. Says the Rebbe, nature is important to God, but in a concealed way, in an inside way. But humanity is important to God in a revealed way, every single detail. According to this, now it's understood, which only by the Jews does it say that when God gathers them together, God brings all of the nations back to their proper place. Why is it only by the Jews? It says that God grabs onto each one of their hands individually, even though that also in the other nations is zikr, it's certain that there is hashgacha, that God cares and God directs them. Which one of these Gentiles will be in exile, and which one will be, and which way it will be, and which ones will go out of exile. Because God's care, individual care, was is faran, which is by individual people, by the non-Jews, it's concealed. It's in nature. Something like it is by plants and animals, but everything, God cares about everything. Because it says, because the Jewish people, you are called man. The Jewish people, they are the true example of the first man. They serve God. In the Umas Olam and the nations, therefore, they are not called Adam. In that sense of the world, they're not called Adam. It says by Noah that every human being is made in the image of God. Noah was not a Jew. Every human being is made in the image of man. But it says that the Jewish people, they're made in a deeper image. It says the non-Jews were made in Damut and the Tselem. Okay, however it is, maybe we can say the Jewish people are made in the image of God and the non-Jews are made in the image of the Jews. But all of them are important to God. God is creating every one of them from love, every human being. It's just who has the deeper responsibility, and upon whom does God reveal this special responsibility? That because of that, he takes each one has a special job. Therefore, God takes each and every Jew individually, and it's happening in a really big way in Israel now. In a really big way in Israel. You see all these soldiers, for instance, they're coming totally non-religious, anti-religious. They come back and they're wearing tzitzis. And they have people, what are you becoming religious? Religious? I'm not religious. I'm not religious, but I'm a Jew. I'm a Jew. And you see the big miracles that are happening. It's just incredible. I mean, God is doing everything for me for free. I'm doing this for God for free. I can even more. It's a big reward to be able just to do what God wants. I don't care what. That's the biggest reward of all. And so every Jew in his own way is Obamelis automatically. B'shas men read it. Vegan. There's a lot of people, for instance, they don't want to do Torah and commandments because it's not happy. All of a sudden they meet somebody that tells jokes. What? A religious person, and they're funny jokes, a good joke. Oh, that's good for me. Right? Another person says, a religious person doing jokes. Like that is disgusting. How can you do anything like that? Doesn't turn the guy on at all. Right? Another person sees somebody that he's strong. A religious person that he is strong and he acts as strong. That's for me. Another person says strong. That's not for me. Strong. You see a guy that is weak. I know a lot of people I know people that are handicapped. They have terrible stutters, and they impress non-religious people more than anybody else. Right? You see how happy the person is that he's doing Torah and the commandments. He's happy. What are you happy about? You're stuttering. You can't walk. You can't do this. Ooh, this is a. So everybody is turned on by another aspect of how God cares. So automatically, therefore, when we're talking about returning the Jews back, Vishavti, that God will do it with them. This shows that God is doing something. In Velcha is Nikr, you can see revealed in a revealed way that it's God that's doing it. Is Farana Chiluk, therefore there's a difference. The difference between Shavti, how God returns the non-Jews, and he returns the Jews. Is Blois, God cares about all of them. But when God takes the Jews, it's in a revealed way. A revealed way. When he returns the Jews back to God, they say, listen, this is not a natural thing, what's happening now. Right? It's something that's so intimate and real, and each person, God cares about each and every person to turn that person on to his true Jewish soul, and according to that person's natural soul. According to the person's natural personality, is blois benogea the closest almost. Therefore, there's a difference between returning the non-Jews, the nations of the world, back to their rightful places, which is not the case by the Jews. Is their shav returning them back? This is regarding not just the Jews as a whole, but every single Jew individually. And I mean, I don't know if you know it. I mean, if there's non-Jews watching, but every Jews are markedly different one from the other. They have different personalities. It's almost impossible that they'll all agree on the same thing. Maybe in a general way they can agree on one thing, but if you look at any group of Jews, take, Belzer Hasidim, Vizhnitzer Hasidim, Gira Hasidim, Litvish Jews, they all dress, each one dresses in his own way, exactly the same. They look the same. You start to talk to them, you realize everyone is totally different. They have different ideas, and they have different sense of humor, and they have different goals, and they have different. Each one is totally different. I told you, I think I read somebody showed me a newspaper article that there was someone from a Romanian. There used to be a lot of Romanian workers here in Israel. There's a lot of foreign workers that come and work in Israel. A Romanian worker, and he said that he worked in Israel for 2 years. He worked very hard. He said he enjoyed working by the religious Jews very much because they treated him very well. They treated him very, very well. And I mean, maybe he had some bad experiences with other people because everybody usually they treat non-Jews especially very well. But okay, he said, but one thing interesting, he said, especially on Passover. He said, or Passover, he worked day and night, earned a lot of money. He went back to Romania. He was a rich man. He said, after 2 years, he was there. He said, but one thing he wants to say that by the Jews, they have all these different groups. He says, in Romania, there's like 20 different types of people, and they're all pretty much the same. Each group has its own similarities. They're all very, very similar. He says, by the Jews, they have hundreds of different groups, hundreds and hundreds of different groups. And he said he worked for a lot of them, 20, 30 different groups. He said, and each one of them, every person is different. He says, every single person is different. They have a different personality, a different smile, a different this. He says, so God has to drag each and every Jew by his hand, each and every individual one, and the Jewish people. Because by the Jewish people is the hashkacha pratis, alamal, all the time. Even in the time of exile. But then, Darfman Uncommon, we have to come to thinking deeply. You have to contemplate of their Karen in order to realize, to recognize, as is of their canon, right? As is their Choshech Hagolos, because there is, I'm sorry, that's right, yeah, that's Masha'en came Bisman by some Migdash. Now in the time of exile, God is with us, and there's big miracles happening all the time, but we have to think deeply into it because exile covers it over. The ultimate example of this, as I brought, maybe too many times, but is the 6-Day War. The 6-Day War, the whole entire world saw miracles, and the Israeli government said it was, believe me, it was not miracles. It was our army, it was our Air Force. We got really good pilots. We got pilots, and it was luck, and it was this. So you see that even when there are open miracles, right? If the Jews don't think about it, then says the Rebbe, I'm going to tell you more. Not only there's open miracles all the time, and just like back then, we can decide not to think about them. But as soon as we do, we realize that it's tremendous, amazing miracles. And that's what's going to be the time of the Beit HaMikdash. The time of the Beit HaMikdash, we're going to see that this is not our world, it's God's world. And that all the time God was creating it. And all of the details and all the personalities and all the people, it's big, amazing miracles of love from God. And we just don't see it. But in the future, we'll see it. And then there won't be any bad things in the world. It'll be a world just like it is right now, just like it is, but a world without depression, a world without addictions, a world without aggression, without jealousy, without hatred, without revenge. The world can get along without all these things. Those sap the energy of it without fear. Those sap everybody's energy. It keeps everyone in a little self-made prison of fear and how do you call it, the pessimism, and hatred, suspicion, and all these things are just products of our own minds that are just totally unnecessary. But in the time of the Holy Temple, and that's the idea of redemption, going out of all the negative things that stop us from being who we really are. That's going to be in the time of the redemption. Okay. Was therefore, this whole idea of the future redemption, the Geula. This idea of the future redemption, the future Geula, it says that God will take with his hand, really, without any concealment. It says that everyone will see that it is God's hand that's taking them out. And like I say, I've heard over and over from a lot of soldiers that come back, open miracles, open miracles, and that everyone sees that it's only because of God's love. And I mean, just to make it clear, God does not enjoy destroying the non-Jews. He does not enjoy it. God wants very much that our enemies should just stop being our enemies. Stop being, the insanely foolish Israeli government has allowed the Arabs in Gaza, to educate their children to hate us. And now it expects them to suddenly stop. I mean, there's generations already, 15 years, how long has it been since they left Gaza, right? So that's already, who knows how many generations of first graders, second graders, 15, right? That they've been educated to hate us. And so in a way, they're not guilty. In a way, we're the ones that are guilty. Right? We're the education, people's mindsets. The whole idea of the future redemption is that people will have a mindset of truth, of love. That's what it means. But the fact that in the future redemption, we'll see it. But now it says lo yarpecha v'lo yazvecha. It says that God will not let you go. Don't worry about it. If you're in exile, God will take everybody by their hand. Und das is oich der diuk. That's what it means, that God will take everybody by their hand. Mamish. Really, what does it mean, mamish? Remember we asked the question? Here, let's see. Let's go back over here. Rashi here. It says that God will. Here it says. What does it say? Mamish, 1 second. We had this before. God holds on to the hand of every Jew. Mamish, really. What is it? What does it say? Mamish, really? Of course, he holds on to the hand of every Jew. Why did Rashi put this word mamish in there? So it says, Rebbe, I'll tell you why. Because that's what it means, mamish. Because ochas biyado, that God will grab onto every Jew. It will be in mamish, in reality, in nature. Mamish means to be able to feel it. You'll feel in nature that this is by unda oich by bnei Ammon, aber nit mamish. God will also grab the hand of every non-Jew, but it won't be in a way that you'll actually feel it. And actually, by the Jews, the miracles will be so tangible that God is bringing the Jews back. Listen, our enemies, this Hezbollah and this Hamas, they have shot something like 50,000 missiles at us. It was 50,000. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it was only 30,000 missiles. One missile could, who knows, kill 1,000 people. One missile. But they shot tens of thousands of missiles at us. And everyone knocks down buildings and this and that. Okay, the Yain Shel Torah. Let's talk about now the Yain, the wine of the Torah, the inside of the Torah. What is it? Here we go. Let's see, what is this? Okay, here we go. Ready? I just want to see something where it stands over here. Shalom, Mendel. Shalom. I'm Mosir Shiur. Okay. There we go. Okay, the wine of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah. And maybe we'll leave this till tomorrow, but let's see. According to what we said before, after everything, it's still a little bit difficult. But we've explained everything very nice, but still we have a little bit of a question. What's the question? Vibal, because as by kibbutz, when God will gather all the Jews together, is lamaila nogeya yeder yid is important to every Jew individually. Is doch verstanden, so it's understood, is by their letzter yid, by the last Jew, that nigal veren, that's redeemed, gefindt sich the Shechina kivyachol b'tzoras hagolos. So it means that as long as there's one Jew in exile, so no Jew is more important than anyone. So as long as there's one Jew left in ignorance, so God is still in exile. So it comes out, weiter the Shadal is the question, Via Zoi veter Eibishter, how can God redeem the Jewish people and holding each one by their hand while, and we said, because we said he's grabbing on by his hand the first Jew, or for Royce Nemanim from Gullus, taking them out from exile, and God will return with them. Geht doch a Royce zusammen mit ihm from Gullus. It says, 1 second. God takes the Jews out, but it says, but the Jews, until God takes out all the Jews from exile, and he's going to take them out one at a time. 1 second, what happened over here? 1 minute, something happened. The picture is gone. Why is it gone? 1 minute. 1 minute, what happened? Excuse me, give me a moment here, brother. There we go. Good. Yes. Good. Yes. Good. So here's the picture. I'm sorry. It's on the side. I get it. Okay, good. Okay, so it ends up what happens. God is taking every Jew out one at a time. So if there's one Jew left in exile, so God is there with him. So if God takes all of the Jews out of exile, but there's one Jew that doesn't want to leave, he says, no way, I'm not going to do no boga niet. I don't want anything to do with God. Leave me alone. So God has to figure out a way to get this Jew inspired to go out. So it ends up that God is still there in exile. So God is still with him in exile, even if there's one Jew left. So if so, God did not really go out with the Jews from exile because God is still in exile. Muslim and Zagan, we have to say that this level that it says God will take every Jew out with his hand personally is a ha'ora mitzvah. This is a very low. Something is wrong with this stuff over here. It's a very low, concealed level of godliness. Was is verbunden, which is connected with the word nischalek, to be divided, so to speak, and that this is how God divides himself from every single Jew individually. So therefore is shayech to the hara pratis. Therefore, every Jew gets a special, like a little string of godliness that connects him to God. But the essence of God is out. He's out of exile, and and that little string of godliness, this is what grabs onto every Jew's hand and taking him out of exile. Even though the other Jews are already out, which is not the case by the exile from the main Shekhinah, God's main presence, which this is higher than any divisions. This will go out with all of the Jews when all of the Jews are vet sein erst doch wenn alle Yidden verlen nigal veren. Therefore, so the God, that with aspect of God, that God grabs a hold of each and every Jew individually, that's like a ray of godliness that does that. That is. But the fact of the matter is the essence of godliness, and this really can only be free. God won't have any pain of exile until all of the Jews are out. So in other words, God did go out of exile, but he still suffers as long as there's one Jew that's left. And this Jew, God grabs onto his hand, but so to speak, only a very small ray, just like a little string of godliness takes him out. Like Rashi hints at when he says, Kishina Galim, says when the Jews are redeemed, God signed the papers for himself. What does it mean? That that God, so to speak, itself, the essence of God, will be Ved sign Kishin Nigalin, when the Jewish people are redeemed, all of the Jews will be redeemed. Und wie is madgish, like it stresses also with the language of Shu Yashuv, God will go out with them. Okay, so we have three aspects of godliness over here. One aspect is how God grabs onto the hand of every Jew. And that's done with a little strings of godliness, rays of godliness, each relevant to each individual Jew. And this will go on until every Jew goes out, even the last Jew. Then we have, so to speak, the body of godliness. The body of godliness, that goes out with the Jews from exile. The more Jews go out, the more God is, so to speak, out of exile. But then we have the essence of God. And the essence of God, that's what's in exile totally until every Jew goes out. And then, this is Rashi hinting at when he said the words, Ukishini Galim, when they are all revealed, then God writes redemption for himself. At first glance, what does it mean? The redemption of the Jews will be V'zen as es is Durach Hashem. Everyone will see that it's revealed godliness, like it says in many places. When God reveals himself, so that's the whole thing of redemption. What did we just finish learning? That in the future redemption, There won't be anything concealed. Won't be anything concealed. So if so, as soon as the Jews go out, then God is revealed, right? But what about if there's one or two Jews left in? Is God revealed or not? She says, oh, that's what it means, that God grabs onto every single Jew's hand, mamish, really. Is farvos zokter? Why does he have to say kishinigalim when the Jews are redeemed? When the Jews are redeemed, nit u kisha goalan. Why does it say when they are redeemed? Should say when God redeems them, when God releases them. It doesn't say when they are released. This is talking about the God Himself. Then we would know that the Jews are out. The explanation is, like we said before, as the Bria, the whole entire creation, gate dorech Shem Elokim, like it is created by one of the names of God, which is called the name Elokim, is Naila Venistar. This covers over the who is Tziva Venibra'u. That God, so to speak, creates the world seemingly long distance. That God commands and the world is created. Not that God creates it. That's what it seems. In their Madrigan, that level, which is connected to every single Jew individually, each and every Jew from his source, it comes by means of God's hand. What does it mean? So we see that God is grabbing on to his hand, which is not the case. Masha Enkein Im says Atzmo, God's essence. If this is talking about God, the very essence of God. So that aspect of God that grabs onto the hand of every Jew, that's just like a ray of godliness. And we can see that ray of godliness, but God's essence we don't see. This will only be when all of the Jews get out. Then will be with Kishin Nigalim, when they are all revealed, redeemed. All of them, all of the Jews, each and every one of them. Then, so to speak, here we go. Yeah. All the Jews are redeemed, each and every one of them. All the Jews, because of this level, so all of the Jews will be redeemed in a way of, so to speak, automatically. And this, I think we're going to stop here. We're going to stop here because I want to go over what we learned last time. And tomorrow we'll finish this Friday. We'll finish this and we'll go over what we just did. And because the lesson is very deep, the lesson is very alive. How the essence of God and the aspects of God and how God relates to each and every Jew and each and every human being in a different way. And that's the whole idea of the future redemption, as we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's do the Yom Yom. Here we go.